Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Well, yesterday, which was November 21st, 2020, we were supposed to play The Sky is No Limit in the middle of the morning, and instead one of our players couldn't make it, so we decided to play Circle of Hands. We have not played this game for 1 year. Was the last time we played. So today we played Venture 5. Anthony has run 2 sessions or 2 ventures. I ran 2 ventures, and so it was Eloy's turn. And so a year ago, he prepared this venture, and we've just kind of had trouble getting the three of us together when we weren't doing something else. So we finally get to play Circle of Hands again, and it was an absolute blast. Now, we did something today that you're really not supposed to do, but we really had no choice, and that is to kind of split a venture into 2 different parts. Because we just simply ran out of time. Anthony had to go someplace, and we'd gotten to the point where it was obvious we were going to get into a combat with some hideous creature of Urbaja, and we decided, well, let's stop, and we'll recommence. So we're going to do that as soon as possible. Other than that, the session was great. And that was fine too, but just was something that you're generally not supposed to do with this. It was a real hoot. So it's funny, like we were talking about doing this like kind of last minute. It was at my 5 a.m. and so I haven't read these rules in a while. So one of the things that Eloy did a long time ago was he had made some cheat sheets or some rule, and took out a bunch of the rules so we could take a look at them and reference them and what have you. Anthony had made an updated errata-free version of the spells lists and what have you. But I realized that like part of where we had stumbled from time to time was within the combat. And I just want to make sure that we had all our ducks in a row. And so what I did was I made myself my own little sheets of how all this stuff works and how initiative works in combat and missile combat and combat versus named or unnamed characters and groups and all that sort of stuff. And it's one of those truisms. Eloy and I talk about this an awful lot. You play a role-playing game, and maybe it comes with a game master screen, or there's some kind of sheet document or whatever. And you look at one of these things, and it never has exactly what you would put on it. Maybe it has some extraneous information that or just something that you don't use, or it's too easy for you to remember. But there's other things that you have trouble remembering them. And so you decide, well, I'm going to make my own cheat sheet. And by the time you make yourself a reference sheet, you no longer need it. Because typing all these things out, paraphrasing some of them to make them fit on the page better and what have you, I realized now I understand this. But it was good to have the document there. So, we had another combat that happened at one point between Anthony's character Kaiernst and one of the named characters in the venture, and so it was neat to be able to have that document be able to help as things went on. So that was pretty cool. You'll see me in the beginning of the venture kind of waffling over which character I'm going to play, which circle knight I'm going to play, because as the procedure is that the game master in the very beginning lets you know what part of the Crescent Land you're going to be in. So we're going to be in northern Rolke, and then right in the border of Famberge, however you want to pronounce it, and also the lowest number component, which was knowledge. In this case, was knowledge of some kind of military or martial type. And so it was on, who are we going to pick? And I instantly had a bet, with Eloy. I kind of put it in the private Zoom chat so Anthony couldn't see who I was, saying. And, I won the bet. And in fact, Kaiernst was the character that Anthony chose. And that made a lot of sense because Kaiernst, one of his characters, although you can use any of the characters in the circle, is somebody with he's a gentry, he's got a martial background. This would be something that would really interest that character. So I really, figured he'd probably pick him out. So you'll see me waffling a little bit because at first I say I want to play Black Hadrick, and then I say, no, I'm going to change my mind and play Ancelmere. And why that really happened was Black Hadrick is one of those characters that as he's been played, as I've watched people play him, although I think although I might have been the only person who's played him, he's really a very compelling, very interesting character. He's somebody I really hoped I'd get a chance to play and see what it was like to be Black Hadrick. And so I realized I was being intellectually dishonest, and I wasn't necessarily picking the person that was suggested by the venture. Certainly didn't suggest Ingolf to me very much, or Wolfram, my 2 characters. Didn't really suggest Ottomer, the hunter. Hadrick could have fit, but Anselm was a much better fit, being a low martial character. And it's another one of Anthony's characters, and we've got to see him played in the last venture. So I figured, what the heck, I'd like to play Anselm, and I'm glad I did, because it was really neat to see how these characters kind of emerge, as you're playing them. And sometimes they do things that surprise you. And even though you've seen them played before, so it's really neat as the characters get passed on to different people, and just as what happens with these characters. It was certainly fun to watch Anthony kind of surprised as he's playing Kaiernst at how big of a jerk Kaiernst really is. Very, very haughty and very proud and very full of himself. Because Circle Knights, just because they're Circle Knights, doesn't mean they're angels, doesn't mean they don't have faults. It just means that they have a certain amount of authority to act, a certain amount of not necessarily moral authority, but they have the authority to make judgments, to act. They're the kind of people that will do these sorts of things. And where do they get this authority from? Well, it's not just being a member of the circle, of the young king and Rolke. It's just kind of who they are. I think they're kind of drawing that authority from themselves. People that are willing to stand up, make judgments, and say, this isn't right, I'm going to do something about this. And of course the circle is part of all that. So it was very interesting. We started out having been at the town of Hofstra. I really had a hard time writing it down, this multi-syllabic name. In northern Rolke, it was right next to Edmundburg, a village in Vanberge. And these two villages have been kind of at odds, and there's a mountain pass in between them. Right in the middle of that mountain pass is this fortress, and apparently it got revealed to us over time that fortress has probably changed hands a bunch of times and has been there since time immemorial. And right now, the people of Edmundburg actually hold this fortress. And there's a whole bunch of named characters in this venture. There was something 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then I ascended one more person. So we had Adalbert, the old chieftain of this village. We have Gunther, who is another gentry, who is somebody that really is advocating that we need to, or the village needs to seize control of this fortress right now, because the winter's coming and we're going to be helpless otherwise. And apparently they're worried about being attacked. A bunch of their stores, which is very odd, a bunch of their stores were in a building that caught fire, and so now the village is caught somewhat unprepared for the winter, and they're a little bit more vulnerable. The actual military knowledge was there were other secret passages through these mountains that could be kind of useful, and this is something that the village of Hofstra instead, where we are, has as secret knowledge. The people in Edmundburg don't necessarily know this is actually true, at least as far as we know, they don't know. So we've got Adalbert, we've got Gunther, we've got the another gentry, Friedman, and Friedman was advocating more like free trade. The idea that instead of being at odds with these other people, we need to even though we don't necessarily like each other, we'll trade our cheese for their grain and everything else, and we'll help each other survive through the winter. And of course, the Gunther and Friedman are really at loggerheads. And Adalbert, he's a likable guy, but I don't want to say he's doddering, but he's an older gentleman. He's probably too old to be the chief now. He might be even 52. Maybe older than that, hopefully. And then this Oswald, the cheese, merchant, the guy that owns most of the goats in the town, is a big, rather corpulent person who just wasn't very likable, but kind of was buddies with Friedman, or at least they kind of, were sort of on the same side, more or less. There's Ingrid, the wife of Oswald, who we meet later on in the venture, and there's Dietmar, the priest, who I've discovered, or Anselm discovered, probably has something going on with young Ingrid, who is the loveliest girl in the village, and Oswald is the richest fellow in the village. Probably really don't belong together, but he probably does. Rich guy gets a pretty girl, apparently, or at least it was the most convenient. Anyhow, we find ourselves in this situation where it all kind of takes place during one night. We're in the main, lodge, the log house of the village, and Adalbert is really asking for counsel from his gentry. They're trying to bring things to a vote. What do we do? Do we attack, or do we, try the trade route and see how that goes? And so it was interesting, how it was fun how we got to pursue it. It was fun to see the two different characters emerge, to see how Kaiernst and Anselm actually interacted with each other. They both had different approaches to things. They both had, different roles, different ways they felt comfortable. Yet they seemed to have enough respect for each other. They would come back and say, well, here's what I found. Here's what I found. What do you think about this? Which was kind of cool because they're circle knights. They're on an evil playing field in that regard. It was kind of interesting, though, because part of what I was informed by the actual description of Ancelmere is that his demeanor is formal, adhering to class-based social boundaries. So as a freeman, he's a little uncomfortable being the person to talk and say things in this room full of gentry. But there was a point when that was exactly what he had to do, and he was okay doing that as a circle knight. It was just something I wanted to make sure that I honored, and it's something that felt kind of right. It was really interesting to see, as he talked to other people that were not gentry, as he ascended one of Friedman's, one of Gunther's guards that was in the place, or one of his men, really, not guard. Because what happened was Kaiernst challenged Gunther to a martial duel, just not as a duel because they were mad at each other, but because, have a show of military strength. Let's have a show of martial prowess. and Kaiernst, beat him handily. But this gave me this great chance to talk to his men and get a feeling for, like, what do you think about this particular fellow? Is he on the level? We were very concerned about this fire, and maybe somebody said it. Did somebody have something to gain? And it became very evident as we thought about it and talked to various people. Both Gunter had something to gain by this fire happening, because now we're our backs against the wall. We have to do something. But at the same time, people like Friedman might have something to gain as well, because our back's against the wall. We're going to have to do some of this trade with these other people. Maybe he's going to profit from that, or get a position of more power. So it was, really, there was a lot of suspicion about that. And it's funny, it turned out in this particular adventure that did not bear any fruit. And I was okay with that. I wondered for a second if I might have felt bad that I spent an awful lot of time in the venture, and as time went on, Kaiernst also went down this road to investigate that, to see if there might have been any kind of foul play, to see if there was somebody that we could look at and say, you know what, this person really has done something really wrong, is heinous, is not a very nice person. Not only is not a nice person, but has put the village at risk for their own personal gain, because that is something that we would not stand for. This didn't turn out to be the case. We were able to find out through magic and through interrogation and everything else that it seems like this was just a normal fire. I didn't feel bad or feel cheated because we went down this road, because it felt very natural. This was a very, very fun session. Probably one of my more fun, relaxed, enjoyable experiences role-playing in a while. Not to say the other games I'm playing aren't like that, or aren't good, or aren't fun, but this one just seemed really natural, with Eloy running it. He did just the right amount of interaction between the non-player characters to give us the flavor. He was a little worried about that, he mentioned, but it was perfect. And just interacting with them, seeing the whole situation, interacting with Kaiernst as well, the way all that stuff happened, it seemed really just easy to step in and run with it. And so, despite the fact that we did a lot of talking and what have you, that's fine. It was really cool. We were able to use the various mechanics of the game. We were able to use the charm rolls and some wits rolls and things like that in some circumstances where I was able to get another charm roll with one person that wasn't charmed by Anselm, was Ingrid. But when you sit down in a circumstance and partake of the cannabis in this particular game, which does not have to mean you get wasted, it just means that it's a cultural thing. Like, having a drink with somebody, that you get to make another charm roll. In fact, he was able to do this and have a better reaction from some people. On the other hand, Kaiernst, well, not a lot of people. He failed a bunch of charm rolls. But so now we're up to 7 named characters, because I asked one of these guards, I asked I forgot your name. So his name is Herman. So I ascended this character. So now he's a real boy. And, I was able to find out there that really, at the end of the day, Gunter, and I relate this to Kaiernst, Gunter's not a bad person. He doesn't have anything nefarious going on. He just is a gentry. And I was talking about this a while ago. It was really neat to see how Anselm really emerged, much to my surprise. And he talked an awful lot about the gentry to other people. They're just, they are. They're just in a different world. They don't understand real life. They're willing to go after things like this, or feel things are very important, but they're not the ones necessarily doing the dying all the time. It's us. It's other people. And it was just neat to see how he emerged in that way. And he wasn't bitter. He just was very matter-of-fact about that. And he was also somebody, I noticed in his background, he's a little sick of this. He's a little sick of the pointless fighting and blood feuds and all those sorts of things. Just really, it's becoming old. And this was very important, in the venture as it went on. I didn't think about that constantly, but who this character is really started to make sense for me. So we find out that, in fact, Ingrid is obviously having some kind of affair with Dietmar the priest. We find out Dietmar the priest is in some place, and things are just a little bit odd. The place is a little warm. He's got this kind of fertility statue there, and it's really not exactly the kind of religion you would find in the Crescent Land. Things just seemed a little weird, but Anselm is just not imaginative enough to put 2 and 2 together other than to know this is strange. And he's going to tell Kaiernst about it. It was a good thing he did. So it was really kind of neat to come back to the lockhouse, because Kaiernst stayed there while Anselm was having his little bit of following Oswald to find out what's up with Oswald there. They didn't trust him as far as they could throw him. He's a big guy, can't throw him very far at all. Now can he? But Oswald comes back. Ingrid comes back. Ingrid is accused of cheating by Oswald, which is true. And in fact, Ingrid actually makes an indecent proposal to Anselm after when he's escorting her home. And, it was this one of those split-second things. Like, yeah, he takes her up on it. And we kind of faded to black. We didn't, talk things out in lurid, and ridiculous detail. But just, for whatever reason, the character kind of emerged once again. He's not an angel. And he's somebody that would certainly, she wants to leave the village, and that's something he would honor, but not because he wants a wife. A Circle Knight doesn't need nor want a wife. At least that's the version in my head that's showing up. But he's honorable enough to stand by his word. If somebody really wants help, he will help them. However, at the same time, he was finding there's nobody to like. The only person in this entire village to really kind of like is Adalbert, the old leader. Ingrid is definitely duplicitous and manipulative. Oswald is just a selfish man. Gunther, not necessarily unlikable, but somebody that's willing to put other people's lives at risk for his own fears, but really cares about the village. But then Friedman just gives you this vibe of being like just a really a kind of a greedy person himself, and maybe he's concerned about the community, but it's hard to tell. Dietmar the priest is somebody that just doesn't seem, he's supposed to be, the priests in this game are different, but they're kind of like not the moral leader, but just sort of like the heart and soul of the community, the person that's kind of the glue that holds people together and helps people like endure this kind of life that the Iron Folk have, and just didn't seem to be that sort of fellow. You got the wrong kind of vibe off this guy to begin with. Herman was actually a pretty nice guy. You like him, but it's interesting. I would have been absolutely okay with us leaving at some point and doing nothing. One of the things about reading this book, and I took it to heart, is there's nothing you're supposed to be doing. When you're in adventure as a Circle Knight, you're making these judgment calls for yourself. And there's times when you show up in a venture and you find out that this person deserves to be killed. Something is happening over here, needs to be stopped. And damn it, I'm going to stop that. That's the kind of stuff that Circle Knights do. But these are decisions you need to make for yourself. It's not something that the Game Master shows you. Here's the bad thing. You figure it out. And, constantly what Anselm was coming up with is, this is a weird situation. There's no real good people here. But I don't see anybody that I need to remove from power or kill or stop from doing anything. And these people just, I was almost kind of ready to play apostle and kick the dust off, my shoes as I left there. And I forget the name of the Star Trek adventure where they go through the time portal and just be like Jim Kirk and say, let's get the hell out of here. Okay. I've had it with these people. It's one of those things where Anselm, like his key event, just like, yeah, I'm ready to go. Enough of this. However, at the very end, when I really thought, that we probably weren't going to find anything else out, but we go down to see Dietmar, the priest, with Ingrid and Oswald, that things changed. And it's because Anselm, or Kaiernst rather, looks and sees the idol and takes a better look at it, and all of a sudden, this some sort of creature or Urbaja starts to emerge from it, immediately kills Oswald, and all of a sudden it's on. And, despite the fact that Anselm is not an angel, he certainly was, get thee behind me, Ingrid. Great line. He was going to protect her. That doesn't mean that he's an angel and wouldn't, didn't take advantage of a woman that was throwing herself at him either. Just interesting to see how these characters emerge. But this is one of these moments where you realize, okay, we don't have enough time to really play this combat out. It's too important to just hand wave, because we thought about that for a second. It's like, so we're going to come back to this combat, see how it happens. I didn't realize until later on during the day. I was like, oh man, we're not wearing any armor. This is bad. We could be in a world of hurt, but we're going for it. And Kaiernst is a fellow. He's just full of, man. Just watching him in this session was a work of art to see that character emerge and just be so haughty and just. But he's ready. And Anselm took a step back for a moment, so it happened. And of course, he's instantly starting to react. Like, yes, we need to take care of this as well. There was something now we can look at. This is wrong. This is something I can do something about. And that's one of those things that happens. There's a theme in the Crescent Land: is pure Urbaja or pure Emborian themselves. They are destructive of life. It wouldn't matter if it was a creature of Emborian or a creature of Urbaja. There, it's something that should not be there. It's something that's going to corrupt and destroy these people. And unless it's balanced by the other color, unless Rabaja and Borean are together, then you have a chance for them to balance each other out, and you have some sort of harmony and some sort of synthesis. But on their own, either one, just absolutely just corrupt and destroy, and are antithetical to the life of the Iron Folk, to human life. So this is something he can look at and do something about it. Maybe he will fail in the attempt, but this is something that's important to do something about. Other than that, really was ready to leave and would have been fine with it and would have said this was a great venture. Now we have this other thing in front of us, and so now we're going to find out whether we live or die or what actually happens. And I thought about that. It was a great metaphor for what was going on with Edmundburg and with the village. We were in Hofstra instead. I hope I'm not butchering that. Same kind of thing. Both villages were, at loggerheads with each other for no real good reason. They were stronger together. They were both the Iron People. It didn't matter. There were two villages on either side of a mountain pass with a fortress in between them. Who put that up there in the first place? How old is this feud, really? Does it really matter? We are the Iron Folk. We're going to be stronger together. And it was great to see that, Kaiernst had said that earlier in the venture. It was something that Anselm, I think, might have mentioned once or twice, but not in as eloquent a fashion as Kaiernst did here. And so this theme of that being more important kind of emerged, even though we really weren't necessarily pushing for do free trade thing, because that necessarily didn't, that didn't seem to be. It didn't seem like there was a real reason to back this fellow either. It was just something that was in the background, and it was really neat to see that kind of metaphor show up just with the unchecked Rabaja. As I was thinking about it today, that was really kind of neat, and maybe it's just what I saw. As a Circle Knight. I really, really like this game. I really like this session. I think that Eloy did a great job. It's just a pleasure to see these characters emerge. And it was kind of uncanny to just be that satisfied with it, even if we didn't pass judgment on anything, even if we didn't take action, to just say, hey, this is something that's, leave these people to themselves. Another funny thing is, I've been doing all this reading and researching of 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons because I'm, having to run it and play it. And, there were parts of the Circle of Hands combat they're not complicated, they're different. And it was something that we had trouble with in the beginning. So, as I put together my little cheat sheet here, I laughed to Anthony and Eloy and said, man, this, now I'm looking at this in new context, this is easy. I was just looking at, I'm not making fun of 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. You get the idea that it's much bigger. This is a very, very simple game, once you wrap your head around the rules. So really, really enjoying the session. Really looking forward to see how we conclude it. And I just found all the characters, even though Anselm hated them, and they loved Anselm, I found it really compelling. I found the whole dynamic, the whole vibe of the venture to be really immersive, really engaging, despite the fact that I had to get up. I was up at my 3:30 in the morning and playing at my 5. Just a lot of fun. Something else probably really relevant I was going to say about it, but it doesn't really matter. It was just a fun, an immersive, and engaging. There was no moments when I was bored. Game session, making the kind of stuff that makes role playing worth it. The kind of stuff that makes you come back. And this is something that makes me want to play this game more than the 6 sessions that we agreed to play. Just to see what happens with all the Circle Knights and with the various situations they're in. What does this particular circle end up being like, and what do we end up doing over the course of time? And so that's it, and we'll find out later. I'll be back to report on, if we make it, on what happens and my impression upon that. Have a good day, kids.